Ella Harris believed in the kindness of strangers. Mark Dempsey believed no one would ever suspect him. Their paths crossed on a rainy night in a quiet town, and what started as a simple ride home became a trap that would cost Ella her life and leave a young child waiting at a window for a mother who would never return. Ella Harris was only 24 when she moved to a quiet Midwestern town with her toddler son, hoping to leave behind the chaos of her past and the noise of the city that had drained her spirit. She found a small apartment in an old brick building on the edge of town, where the streets were lined with tall, whispering trees, and the evenings were filled with the distant hum of crickets. She wanted a place where she could finally breathe, where her son could grow up playing in the grass and watching the clouds move slowly across the sky, not trapped inside a small room while sirens screamed in the distance. Every morning, Ella would carry her son on her hip as she walked down the creaking stairs to begin the day, her tired eyes brightening each time he giggled or pointed out a bird on the wire. She found work at a small diner near the bus station, where she poured coffee for truck drivers and local workers who came in before dawn, exchanging small smiles and quiet nods, grateful for the tips that helped her pay rent. At night, she would return home, her shoes worn from the long walk, holding her son close while climbing the steps, whispering to him that things would get better, that she was doing everything for him. The neighbors in her building noticed her kindness, how she would help an elderly woman carry her bags up the stairs, or how she would offer an apologetic smile when her son's laughter echoed through the halls. Some saw her as just another young mother trying to make it alone, unaware of the weight she carried, unaware of the fear she hid behind her polite greetings. She never shared with them the reasons she had left the city, the nights she spent in fear, the mistakes she had made, or the people she was trying to escape. She believed this town was a new chapter, a place where people would not judge her for her past, where she could find safety and a chance to start again. But soon, small things began to happen that she tried to ignore. A light bulb unscrewed in the hallway, footsteps outside her door late at night, the creak of the stairwell when no one was there. Then, one morning, she found a folded piece of lined notebook paper in her mailbox with no stamp, no return address, just her name in shaky handwriting. The note simply said, "Leave while you can." She tried to brush it off, telling herself it was a prank, maybe a cruel joke from a bored teenager in the building, and she threw it away. But as the days passed, more notes came, each one more direct, telling her to leave, telling her she was not welcome, telling her that she was being watched. Still, she told herself this town was safe, that people were kind, and that she would not run again. She did not tell anyone about the notes, thinking it was best to stay quiet and not draw attention. She was determined to build a life for her son, to prove that she could handle whatever came her way. She did not know that her belief in the goodness of people would be the very thing that would place her in the path of a stranger who was already watching, waiting, and planning to take from her the little safety she had left. Ella noticed the blue truck for the first time on a cold morning as she left for work, the exhaust rising in soft clouds while the engine idled quietly across the street. She saw a man sitting inside, hands on the steering wheel, staring out the windshield, as if he wasn't looking at anything in particular. At first, she assumed he was waiting for someone, or maybe just resting, and she pushed the thought from her mind as she adjusted the blanket around her sleeping son in the stroller. But the truck was there the next morning, and the morning after that, parked in the same spot, the man sitting silently, sometimes pretending to check his phone, sometimes simply staring straight ahead. Each time she stepped out, she felt the weight of his gaze. Even if he didn't turn his head, Ella tried to ignore it, reminding herself she could not afford to be paranoid, that she was just imagining things because of the notes that had begun to feel like a shadow in her life. She forced herself to smile at neighbors, to chat about the weather, to let her son play on the patch of grass outside their building, as she kept her eyes on him. Yet, every time she glanced toward the street, the blue truck was there, a constant reminder that something was not right. She told herself that people were kind, that she should not assume the worst, and that she could not live in fear forever. The weather turned rainy, with gray skies pressing down on the small town, leaving puddles along the sidewalks. As Ella pushed the stroller home from work, it was late, the streets empty except for the occasional car passing by, headlights cutting through the misty darkness. The blue truck pulled up beside her slowly, the window rolling down with a soft mechanical whine, and the man leaned out, asking if she needed a ride. His voice was calm, almost kind, telling her it was too cold for the baby to be out in the rain. She hesitated, shifting her weight, looking down at her son, who was fussing softly beneath the thin blanket. She wanted to believe that people could still be good, that not every stranger was someone to fear. She accepted the ride, her heart pounding as she lifted her son into the truck, the scent of stale coffee and rain filling her senses as she slid into the passenger seat. The man introduced himself with a quiet nod, saying he had seen her struggling and wanted to help. He asked her where she lived, and she pointed, unable to find her voice as she clutched the strap of her bag tightly. The ride was silent, the wipers clicking against the windshield, the man glancing at her occasionally, his expression unreadable in the dim light of the dashboard. When they reached her building, he parked and stepped out, insisting on helping her carry her grocery bags up the stairs. She let him, forcing herself to believe it was kindness, that she had no reason to be afraid. He left with a wave, disappearing down the stairs as she closed the door, locking it behind her with shaking hands. That night, she found another note under her door. No envelope, just a torn piece of lined paper with the words, "You shouldn't have let me in." Her hands trembled as she crumpled the paper, the edges cutting into her palm as she tried to tell herself it was nothing, that she could not let fear control her, unaware that she had just let danger cross the threshold of her small, fragile world. Ella's absence was first noticed when she did not arrive at the diner for her early Saturday morning shift. She was always on time, sometimes arriving even before the manager unlocked the doors, her son bundled on her hip, half asleep while she prepared coffee for the first wave of customers. That morning, the empty counter felt strange, the clock ticking loudly in the silence as the staff waited, assuming she was simply running late. Calls to her phone went unanswered, each ring echoing into a void that quickly turned into a quiet, gnawing concern in the pit of the manager's stomach. Later that day, a neighbor noticed Ella's curtains still closed even though the sun was high, the same curtains she always opened to let her son watch the birds and cars below. The neighbor knocked lightly, pressing her ear to the door, hearing only the faint sound of a child's whimper. She called the landlord, her voice shaking, insisting something was wrong, that she could hear the child crying alone inside the apartment. The landlord arrived, keys jingling nervously as he unlocked the door, pushing it open to the scent of stale air and the quiet, desperate sobs of a child who had been alone for too long. Inside, Ella's son was found sitting on the kitchen floor, clutching a cracker in one small hand, his eyes red and swollen from crying. He was wearing the same clothes he had slept in, and his cheeks were dirty with tears. There was no sign of Ella. Her purse was on the counter, her phone was on the table with a low battery warning flashing on the screen, and her keys were beside it. Only her shoes were missing, the pair she wore when she needed to step outside quickly. The soles worn thin from countless walks to work and the store. The police arrived, the small apartment quickly filling with the hum of radios and the soft, urgent movements of officers taking photographs, checking windows, and dusting for fingerprints. Neighbors stood in the hallway, whispering, their eyes wide as they watched officers carry out bags of evidence. Volunteers arrived to take care of Ella's son while her sister was contacted, her voice cracking over the phone as she was told that her sister was missing, that no one knew where she was, that her son had been left alone for hours. Search teams formed quickly, moving through the nearby woods and abandoned buildings, calling her name into the heavy, humid air of late summer. Flyers with Ella's photograph, her tired but hopeful smile, were posted in store windows, at gas stations, and on the doors of the diner where she had worked so hard for her new life. People who had seen her daily began to realize how little they actually knew about her, how her quiet kindness had hidden her struggles, and how she had been alone in a town that had felt safe until now. Rumors began to spread as people recalled seeing the blue truck parked near her building in the early hours of the morning, pulling away slowly, its headlights cutting through the darkness. No one had written down the license plate. No one knew the man's name, only that he had been seen watching, waiting, and driving away on the day Ella vanished. As each day passed without answers, the hope that she would return home safely began to fade, leaving behind only fear, confusion, and the haunting reality that Ella had disappeared without a trace, while her child waited alone in the silence of an empty home. A month after Ella's disappearance, the quiet tension in the town finally shattered when a hiker walking through the woods discovered something unusual beneath the tangle of branches and rotting leaves. A hand, pale and stiff, was visible in the dirt, barely covered, as if someone had tried but failed to hide it completely. The hiker ran back to the road, gasping for air, and called the police, his voice shaking as he explained what he had found. Officers arrived quickly, taping off the area and moving with grim silence as they cleared away the debris and uncovered the shallow grave. Inside was Ella, identified later through dental records, her clothing damp and stained from weeks of rain and dirt, her necklace broken and tangled in her hair. The medical examiner confirmed she had died the day she vanished, because of death strangulation, the mark still clear on her fragile neck, even after weeks in the cold ground. It was a discovery that rippled through the town like a bitter wind, chilling everyone who had hoped she might return, shaking the sense of safety that had held the small community together. Near the grave, police found tire tracks imprinted in the soft earth, leading back to the main road. They took casts, hoping it would match something, anything that could lead them to the person who had done this. As the investigation deepened, officers searched Ella's apartment again, looking for overlooked clues. They discovered the crumpled notes she had hidden in a drawer, the lined paper with harsh handwriting telling her to leave while she could, the last note saying she should not have let him in. The connection between the notes and the man in the blue truck was now impossible to ignore. The police released a description of the vehicle to the public, urging anyone with information to come forward. Slowly, tips began to arrive, people recalling seeing the truck near Ella's apartment and parked near the diner where she worked. A delivery driver remembered seeing the truck parked along a side street in the early morning, the man inside appearing to watch the building for hours without moving. The pieces were coming together, but the man and his truck were gone, vanished just days after Ella was reported missing. Eventually, the blue truck was found abandoned in an industrial area outside of town, hidden behind a row of rusting storage containers. The inside of the vehicle was a mess, with ripped seats and the smell of decay hanging heavy in the air. Officers found a stained piece of lined notebook paper in the glove compartment with the words, "She trusted me," scrawled across it in the same handwriting as the letters Ella had received. It was the only message left behind, a cruel reminder of the trust she had given to a stranger who had taken everything from her. As news spread that Ella's body had been found, the town was flooded with grief and guilt. Candlelight vigils were held outside the diner, where customers and co-workers left flowers and photographs, whispering prayers for her son and family. The small bench at the park where Ella often took her son remained empty. The laughter that once filled the air, now replaced with silence. The search for the man in the blue truck became a priority, but with no recent sightings and no clear trail, he remained a shadow, slipping further away while the town struggled to understand how kindness could have led to such a brutal end. After Ella's body was found and the blue truck discovered abandoned, the small town that had once felt safe fell into a quiet fear that touched every street and every home. Parents who once let their children play outside without worry began calling them in early, locking doors even during the day, checking windows twice before going to bed. The diner where Ella had worked changed. The laughter and chatter that once filled the mornings replaced with whispers and lowered eyes, as if everyone was carrying a shared guilt for not seeing the danger that had been so close. Ella's son was taken in by her sister, who moved into the town to care for him, filling their small apartment with photographs of Ella, holding on to every memory she could preserve for the boy who would grow up without the mother who had loved him fiercely. At night, her sister would sit quietly, holding Ella's son as he fell asleep, wondering how to explain to him one day what had happened, how to tell him that his mother had trusted someone she shouldn't have, and that the kindness she showed others had been used against her in the most unthinkable way. Police continued to search for the man in the blue truck, circulating his description across multiple states, working with neighboring agencies to track down every lead. There were occasional sightings, reports of a man fitting the description working odd jobs in distant towns, but each lead ended in dead ends, each search leaving officers returning home empty-handed, unable to bring closure to a family and a community that had been left with too many unanswered questions. The man who had taken Ella's life had slipped through the cracks, leaving behind only fear and a lingering sense of unfinished justice. The small memorial bench in the park where Ella used to sit with her son was placed beneath the tree that offered shade in the summer and a gentle rustle in the breeze, a place where people could come to leave flowers, small notes, or simply sit in silence to remember her. Her name was engraved in simple letters, along with the short phrase, "She believed in kindness." It was a reminder, a quiet marker of the life she had tried to build, the hope she had carried even in the face of fear, and the trust she had given to a stranger who had taken it away. Over the years, Ella's story became one often spoken about in quiet conversations, in local schools when teaching children about safety, and in church gatherings when reminding people to be careful but to hold onto their humanity. True crime podcasts covered her case, and local news ran anniversary stories, urging anyone with information to come forward, reminding people that the man responsible was still out there, living somewhere, perhaps near another quiet town, where people believed in the kindness of strangers. Ella's story became more than a tragedy. It became a cautionary tale that lingered in the minds of those who heard it. Her sister fought to ensure that her son would grow up knowing the strength and warmth of the mother he lost, making sure he knew that his mother's kindness was not a weakness, even if it led to her death. But beneath it all, the town remained marked by the memory of what happened. By the day a young mother disappeared because she believed in the goodness of people, leaving behind a silence that could never fully be filled, and a reminder that trust, while beautiful, can sometimes become the doorway through which darkness enters quietly, forever changing the lives it touches.